Simon, again, Everton in the news this morning. It appears Everton have received a loan from prospective new owners, 777 Partners. And a few raised eyebrows about these prospective new owners as well. Details of the financing have not been disclosed, but amid Everton's financial situation, pressure mounting over the new stadium, of course, how's that going to get funded? 777 has already, it's been reported, made a payment worth tens of millions of pounds. Mm-hmm. Is that in order at a time like this when they don't actually have their hands on the football club yet? They're not owners yet?
Well, it's a loan, isn't it? So I imagine it has commercial terms attached to it, which means that if in the event that they don't convert into ownership, that will, there was once upon a time Fahid had 125 million worth of loans in Everton that about 2 years ago he converted into. It was introduced as a new 125 million worth of funding to Everton, and it wasn't. It was just a conversion of loans into some equity. So I look at this and say, look, most football clubs borrow money for one thing or another. There are a few exceptions to that, and whilst this is probably a nice little story added into the other stories where people have pulled out of deals and funders have decided to reroute their funding. Clearly Everton wanted some dough because they had a deal which had to be rerouted away from funding Everton Football Club into funding the stadium because the current existing funders, I think it was Dell, had lent some money, and in the event of somebody lending some more money, they wanted to be repaid early. And that would all be around security, people lending money and securitizing it against something, and the initial funders saying, well, we're the first security, you're not getting in front of us. So we know that there are going to be issues because Everton are trying to raise a bit of capital. From my view, Moshiri doesn't want to be in any shape or form economically indexed to Everton anymore.
And you can understand that. He's put hundreds of millions of his own money in.
Well, yeah, you can understand it from one extent. I don't know his economic position. I don't know whether he's challenging other parts of his portfolio of assets. But the reasons why he's economically challenged is because he made the decisions that put him in that position. Nobody dragged him kicking and screaming into rooms to pay £50 million for this footballer or make that decision on that or this for that or that for the other. He made those decisions. So there is a degree of ongoing responsibility for your own actions.
Yeah, but let me ask you this though, Simon. Where are Everton if this takeover doesn't go through? So already we're seeing that there is something of a relationship between Everton and 777 Partners. That's my point. Before they've actually got control, there's now a working relationship.
But we've seen that before, haven't we? We saw that with the Birmingham fella, didn't we? We saw him going and put some loans in and people start to get a little bit cross with him about undue influence.
And that didn't end well.
Well, it didn't end well because the observations were made about undue influence and the fact that they weren't in a position of influence and weren't approved to be so. This is a commercial loan. This won't be a gift. Now, it may well turn out if 777 Partners and their little cabal of advisors and operators that come in with them are going to take over Everton Football Club, then I'm sure that loan will take a different feel and texture to it. But right now, it's a commercial loan. I'm assuming it'll have all the prerequisite amount of obligations upon Everton to repay it. It might be secured against Everton's TV money because they get their TV money twice a year. They get their money in August and they get some more in April. It might be leveraged against that. It might be leveraged against other receivables. Whatever it is, it's a commercial loan. Clearly, Everton's current owner has no interest whatsoever in putting any more of his own capital into this business, and will look at finding a way to get out of this football club, which includes selling the football club at a discounted rate up front in order to get out the door for future obligations, because the running of the football club requires capital. He doesn't want to deal with that anymore. He doesn't want to be part of it. So he's going to take a pill on the price of the football club. He's going to allow people to pay for it on the drip. He's going to take additional revenue if they achieve additional things. All of these are because he's very keen to get out from underneath of the ongoing obligations that you have when you run a football club.
But again, get back to my point though, Simon, surely that means this takeover with 777 has got to work. It's got to happen because they're already lending the football club or Moshiri directly money.
That depends on
big money.
It depends on the shape of the deal that Moshiri wants. We at this moment in time have no visibility of what Moshiri is asking them for. And it may well be he might be asking them for a couple of £100 million up front. And then the rest of whatever they may be offering him on the drip further down the line, based upon Everton staying in the Premier League, based upon this, based upon that. It might come to the point where, let's be clear, Everton Football Club is a desirable football club. If Newcastle is desirable, Everton is equally as desirable.
Yeah.
It's how you buy it and when you buy it and who you pay on the way in that may well become the barrier to entry or the opportunity. The opportunity for Aston Villa was they were on their knees when Wes Edens and his colleague bought Aston Villa from Tony G because they'd run out of money.
Sure.
I looked at it. I knew what kind of trouble they were in, and they nicked it.
You looked at it?
Yeah, of course I did.
What did they get it for? What did they
got
buy
about
Villa
60
for?
million quid, didn't they?
60 million?
Yeah, 60 million quid. And they got it, they nicked it. They nicked it because it was in distress. There are very few football clubs that are sold when they're real going concerns. I mean, the exception to that is Chelsea, but that became a media construct, didn't it? It became a circumstance of its time when you've got an owner that was ultimately being sanctioned as a result of war crimes in Russia by Russians that he was associated with.
Yeah.
So with all that as a unit, but prior to that, which football clubs have you seen, do you know, have been bought without distress? Okay, United. They'll say there's plenty of distress since they bought it. But look at it. Hicks and Gillette making an absolute horlicks of it. Almost Royal Bank of Scotland shutting down Liverpool Football Club. Right? And in comes John Henry. Look at all these football clubs that have been bought. They've all been bought at a time when there's either something in the water, some big problem, which means someone comes in and buys up an economic price.
And Everton are in this category.
What
would you get? What's the going?
Again,
what's the true worth of Everton?
Well, again,
if Chelsea's 2 billion, United's 5, Newcastle 300 million. Can you believe that? Newcastle 3. What's Everton?
But the thing is that when you're looking at a football club and you're looking at the metrics of it, two things would come to the fore. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? It's what someone's prepared to pay for it, right? That's what it's worth to some extent. And then you have the other commercial activity, which is what is it worth to you? Why are you buying it? What are your motivations? Do you look at it as a part of a strategy that's going to give you other aspects of business opportunity, like Mike Ashley did? Mike Ashley looked at Newcastle, despite his original reasons that I maintain were a bet with Paul Kemsley, in part, the former vice chairman of Tottenham, that he wouldn't do it, and he subsequently did, but he also used it as a commercial vehicle to enhance opportunities for his sports brand and other things that he wanted to do.
Yeah.
So Mike had a view. And look at the toxicity of the atmosphere he was in. Look at the situation he found himself in. He had an entire fan base that were absolutely loathing him. So none of these... So, going to the point, Everton will find a buyer, whether it's this little motley group or it's another one, we'll see, but it will be about a price. And if it means that Mashiri has to walk away with nothing, and rather than ongoing debts, and someone can steal it, who knows? But Everton will find a buyer.
Motley group. You think they're a motley group?
I'm not entirely sure they're the most edifying.
Yeah. We shall see. Everton financially on a cliff edge. Well, we'll find out if they were or are in the fullness of time.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.